Hello, and welcome to episode 343 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast in all of the internet. My name is Jordan Willis.
My name is David Howe, and boy, oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest and a very good friend returning to the podcast for today's episode. Welcome back, the one and only Hans Gougar. How's it going, Hans?
Hey guys, I'm doing all right.
Hans, you're here to talk all about video game movies and video game TV adaptations. There sure are a bunch right now. It's the new IP gold rush as Hollywood continues to run out of ideas.
Yeah.
But of course, we're going to talk about all the news. Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green are coming to Switch. By the time you're listening to this, it'll only be a couple days of a wait. Xenoblade Chronicles X got a surprise Switch 2 edition, which is nice. The Trump tariffs were ruled illegal by the Supreme Court. What does that mean? Phil Spencer is retiring. Sarah Bond resigns. It's just a lot of craziness going on in the game sphere right now. But before we get into all of that, how are y'all doing today?
Good. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Like you said, it was an insane week of video game news this week, and it was kind of almost too much to keep track of. A lot of it kind of do me, so hopefully we won't get too far into the weeds on a lot of what's been going on in the video game world this week. But yes, I did mostly have a pretty nice week this past week. My friend Gideon was in town. You remember Gideon, obviously.
Gideon?
Jordan used to be a roommate of ours, lived in our laundry room for a few months there. Pretty good time. So it was nice seeing him. I got to hang out with him and my buddy Ben and Gideon's sister. I got to meet her kids and whatever. We had a big barbecue on one of the nights. So that was a ton of fun. Nice getting out of the house. But other than that, I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of playing video games. I'm almost done with this like massive, 1,100 page book. So I've been trying to barrel through that. But what about you, Hans? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Speaking of over 1,000-page books, I started a tabletop role-playing game based on Brandon Sanderson books with some of my friends and family, and that's been fun. I've been wanting one of my friends to get into this book series for a long time, the Stormlight Archives, and he never did. But we invited him to this tabletop role-playing game, and the night after the first time he played, he started reading it. So yeah, we take those wins whenever we can get him. So that's been fun. I'm not just work, been working a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I feel.
Wow, brag much. Must be nice.
I know. Yeah, you're talking to two unemployed boys right now.
Well, it is funny because I have like 5 jobs and sometimes no work.
Whoa, okay. Yeah. Share some of those with us, guy.
No, I'm just like, it's just like I have all these disparate things that I'm doing and none of them are giving me enough to do. So I have to just like fill those holes with, I started doing DoorDash now, which is like, yeah.
We are like collectively like 3 production guys. We're like, I feel like we're like 3 filmmakers right now on this podcast. So I feel like we all know like what it's like to go in and out of work in this industry.
All of my friends, like I have friends who work at like 5 different sports teams in North Alabama and Nashville because that's just what he can do. So
yeah.
And he has a day job on top of that.
So. I feel you. What about you, Jordan? How was your week?
Yeah, I went to a 10-year anniversary party for some friends of mine who got married that worked at the Alamo, which was also like a little impromptu Alamo reunion. So it was nice to see some of the people that I worked with there. I hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah, while the Alamo is still around. This is celebrating the fall of man over there.
While it's collapsing.
Seriously.
We definitely did talk about that. So that was, we all felt the same way when we worked there. So, but we just liked each other. So, what are we going to do? But more big news. Yesterday, I screened the fine cut of the movie I shot and have been editing for the director, producer, and one of our like main crew members. So we sat down and watched it, and that has come a long way. I finished the rough cut in December, and then I've been the past 2 months really like hunkering down and like fine tuning a lot of the edits and stuff like that. And now we're at that point where it's like, okay, a lot of the fine cuts are done. Now we just got to figure out what can we take out to like shorten it up and really tighten up the experience and make the movie like what it's going to be. So that's an exciting place to be in. But that's pretty much what I've been up to, that and editing a lot of photos.
Yeah, man, I do love, we talked a little bit about this when we met up in person this past week. We did hang out, which was nice. That's a part of our weeks, I suppose. But that part of the editing process in the movie, that's like where I get really, really excited working on an edit. Yeah. So much so to like, I used to always edit all my own stuff. And I feel like now when I edit more, I like have an editor go up to that point and then I take over at the fine tuning bit because I just love that little like nibbling back and forth. Like, what am I gonna, like give or take a few frames can like make such a huge difference when it comes to selling a line or something like that. So I don't know. That's a little bit of film talk. If you like that, you're gonna love the main topic because I think we're gonna be talking a lot more about industry stuff and whatnot. But before we get into the news and all of that, I do want to give a little bit of shout outs because last week we had Daniel Alba from GBG join us to talk all about Mario Tennis Aces. And we had a bunch of new listeners watching, especially over on the YouTube. And we had a lot of great comments over there. So a couple of those, one was from Mer Saloon, who said, those Mario Tennis Game Boy games story modes are good for their time, but when push comes to shove, they are not that different than what Fever offers for its adventure mode. It's just that they have more dialogue boxes with NPCs who are frankly spewing a lot of tutorial talk as well. I don't know that I totally agree with that. And I haven't gotten super far into the adventure mode of Fever, so I know that that's not really fair to say. But I do think that like you really felt the Golden Sun era of Camelot in those Mario sports games, especially for like, the Game Boy Advance and whatnot. That was the one that I played a lot of. But yeah, thank you for the comment. And I do think that there is some pretty good points in there. Also in the YouTube, Krakow said David wasn't lying about the Jack Bros OST. And goddamn right. We talked a little bit about the Virtual Boy soundtrack for Jack Bros. And that is filled with banger after banger. Over on the Discord, Swampy Southpaw said, I really loved Aces, but yeah, Mario Tennis Fever is a little bit too pricey for me. I'd buy it if it was $50 or so, or if they brought back the GBC GBA adventure mode. That alone would make it worth the $70, in reference to what Mercer Loon was saying. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it, but I really think that most people feel the same way about Mario Tennis Fever, regardless of how good the game is. I think it's just too many Mario Tennis games too quickly, all at too high of a price point, right? And I think if Nintendo's going to flood the market with Mario Tennis games, people would be much more likely to shell out on each iteration if they were at a lower price. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like Madden or something where it's like a built-in base that is just going to buy the same game every year. Mm-hmm. It's just too much, man, when there's like other things to play and it's not enough meat on the single player bone for like someone like me who mostly plays single player stuff. So it's like, I'm not going to be popping in online in a primarily online experience or primarily multiplayer experience. So for me, it was like, if it was like $50, I'd buy it, but 70 is just a big ask.
Yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's a very good game. So if the price is a problem, it's worth checking out Mario Tennis Fever when it goes on sale, certainly. If you would like to be shouted out next week on the show, listener, please drop us a line. Best place to do that is in the comments of the YouTube version of this right below on the video version of the podcast that we have over on YouTube. Drop a like and subscribe over there, or hit us up on social media. We have lots of reels and short videos going out now. Be sure to leave comments over there and we will shout you out next week as well. And if you could leave a review over on Apple and Spotify, tell a friend about the show. Word of mouth goes a long way. But more than anything, I hope you just sit back with a nice bevy and enjoy today's episode because it's going to be a good one. And I think with that, I'm ready to get into the news. Are you guys ready to talk about the cavalcade of news that we got this past week?
Mm.
Very good.
So much news.
So much news. We're getting crushed by it. We're going to start with the recently announced Nintendo Treehouse event that is going to be airing, as of the time of this recording, it's airing tomorrow, and that is on Tuesday. So by the time you're watching this, the Treehouse has already aired. I do know it's going to be about an hour long, which is quite a long time for it only showing 2 games. Those 2 games are Pokemon Pokopia and meet up at Bellabelle Park, the upcoming Switch 2 DLC for Super Mario Wonder. I think that both of these games have a lot that they need to prove to potential buyers to get people to latch on. I know a lot of people have been very positive on Pokopia that have had hands-on. I know a lot of people had like hour-long play sessions with Nintendo of America and previews have been very positive. Jordan, are you excited for either of these games?
I probably am going to end up picking up Pocopia,
Mhm.
despite my best efforts to stay away. I just think it looks charming. I think
Mhm.
it looks like a lot of fun. I think it like looks up my alley. I think there's so many cozy games like that nowadays that it's kind of like pick your skin that you
Mhm.
like. And I'm like, you know what? Playing as a Ditto, like and doing this does appeal to me in a certain way. So I'm kind of curious to see what it's like. Curious to see just like more about the game. But I mean, the last overview trailer they released, it seemed pretty beefy.
Mhm.
Like it seemed like a pretty full game.
I've
So
heard
I
it's like
mean,
a 40-hour game or something like that. So
yeah. So I think I'll probably end up picking up this Bella Bell Park though. If it's mainly a multiplayer experience, I'm gonna pass.
yeah.
So I'm really curious to see the treehouse for that to see if they reveal any more single player content, which I hear there is.
I imagine they will. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, I definitely, for me, it's like I think I need the multiplayer to all be compatible with online in order for me to justify that purchase. Because I don't really live with anyone at the moment that I could just like have like 3 friends over, So it's a tough sell. What about you, Hans? Are you excited for either of these?
I'm interested in Mario Bros. Wonder just because I just like that game. But yeah, if it's just mainly multiplayer, I don't know if I would love to just get I guess spoiler for Xenoblade, but I'd love to just get like a graphical upgrade for it
yeah.
and not
Don't
have
we
to
all?
buy the rest of the DLC that I don't care about.
Yeah, we'll certainly talk
Um,
about that in a second.
But as far as Pokopia, I probably lean more on the Pedix side of things and when it comes to Pokemon.
All right, yeah,
I'm just
good to
not
know.
that big of a fan.
Yeah.
Planting my flag on the Pokemon hater side, I guess.
Wow.
Well, it's a crazy world because we are moving
It's a
into
sad-
more Pokemon
I'm sorry.
news right now. This was a crazy bit of news that dropped the other night. And in fact, I saw this before Nintendo even announced it on the eShop. Just randomly, there popped up Pokemon Fire Red version and Pokemon Leaf Green version to just buy in the Nintendo eShop on the Switch. And it turns out that these are coming out. These are GBA ROMs that are just dropping by themselves in the eShop. These are dropping on Pokemon Day, which is the 27th, where Nintendo also will be having a big presentation. Pokemon Presents is happening on that day. But, we've talked about how are they going to put these classic Pokemon games on the Switch. Coming to NSO doesn't make a ton of sense, especially if it's going to have any kind of trading or home integration, given that you could spoof the capture rate and, multiply items and do crazy trade tricks and whatever with all the NSO features. So I guess the way that they're doing that is they are putting these games out bespoke on the eShop, and they are $20 each. Seems a little high when compared to the games that just come for free to the Nintendo Switch online service. But, if you compare it to the $140 or so asking price for these games physically on eBay, it's not that bad of a pill to swallow. What are you guys' thoughts on this? This is pretty crazy news.
I'm just like so surprised they didn't wait like 2 weeks for this to be a reveal at the Pokemon Presents. So to me, it feels like almost a mistake. Like,
I think it was. Yeah.
And then they're like, we'll just announce it, but I feel like it was maybe supposed to be part of the Pokemon Presents. Like,
well, it's interesting you say that because the week that this just dropped, like, first of all, they just showed up on the eShop and then Nintendo put out like a tweet like a few hours later, like the next morning being like, these are coming with like a little thing on X or whatever. And so before that Monday when Nintendo Music drops usually happen, nothing came out. Right. So whenever these were announced, they did release on Nintendo Music, the soundtrack for both of these games. So I think that they were intending to tease out the Pokemon Presents with these, but I do not think they were just supposed to drop on the eShop like that because it really started a lot of discourse before Nintendo had a chance to kind of corral any of it into place. What about you, Hans? I mean, I know you just said you're a Pokemon hater, but what do you think about the pricing of this?
I do think it's cool that these are coming out. Like, I think giving people access to old games is a great policy in general. I do think that $20 is kind of steep. I don't know. Maybe was it true that it was released on like the Wii U for $10, or am I getting that wrong?
Oh, they might have. I need to look that up. But
Yeah,
I know the 3DS got Pokemon Blue, Red, and Crystal for $10 each.
Okay. Yeah, maybe that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, it's not for me. I probably won't buy these, but I do think it's cool that they're out. Or that they are.
I think the $20 price point would be an easier pill to swallow if it was like both games included.
Yeah.
Like that would have been nice, you know? And also the fact that like literally every language is a separate purchase.
Yeah.
Is like all of that combined. I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, you know, so they're like, be sure to buy the right language edition. And I'm like, dude, like you can't cut me some slack here. I also think for $20, they need to confirm if it's going to be Pokemon Home compatible or not.
Yeah, that's a great thing to bring up because you know, when I checked this, it was like 2 a.m. or something whenever these dropped on the eShop here in the US. On the eShop page in the description, it said Pokemon Home integration is forthcoming. It's not going to be available on launch, but it will be coming eventually. So that means you can upload your Pokemon from these GBA ROMs and then use them in, you know, more modern future Pokemon games, you know, maybe battle them in Pokemon Champions or whatever, that new app that's coming, that's a battle specific one, you know. But then since then they've deleted that from the eShop listing. So to me, that reads like another mistake. I do still believe that the reason that these are coming to the eShop instead of to NSO is because they will have Pokemon Home integration, right? I truly can't see them putting these out, especially for $20 without any way to transfer the Pokemon out of the game, right? So I think that's coming. I just think that a lot of this was, as you said, Jordan, meant to be teased out over time and meant to be in the Pokemon Presents, right? So there's lots. Someone at Nintendo is getting in trouble for this one, I'm sure. Hopefully nobody loses their job. This was just a mistake. And I think that the surprise drop of it was exciting for a lot of people. I think it really got people buzzing. As far as the $20 thing, you know, I find it annoying. And I don't know that I'm going to buy this personally, but that's because, you know, I don't really use Pokemon Home. I don't have much of a reason to, you know, play these on a system that isn't, you know, the emulation systems that I use for games like this. But at the end of the day, think I'm okay with this price point for Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. I wish that was a 2-pack, or I really wish it had some sort of quality of life features like a fast forward or online battling. That would be definitely, like if this had online battling included, like you could do the wireless, you know, with some kind of jerry-rigged back-end thing where you could battle or trade with your friends over the internet, I think I would pick this up immediately. But because there are no online features, I think it's a no from me, right? So I really hope Nintendo gets the picture. It seems like a lot more of their stuff lately has been getting online focused multiplayer added into it, but then they backslide with stuff like this. So I don't know. We'll have to see exactly how this is all going to work out with Pokemon Home. But it's an interesting release, to be sure.
Yeah.
Quickly, before we move on from Pokemon, as we said, the Pokemon Presents for Pokemon Day is on February 27th. Nintendo and Pokemon Company put out a bunch of co-streamer rules on, like, you know, what you can and can't do when co-streaming. It's all the normal stuff, but it does make me think that this is going to be a little bit bigger of a presentation than we normally get for Pokemon. And then in addition to that, also Nintendo revealed the 30th anniversary logos with every one of the over 1,000 Pokemon included in the like zero Pokeball of the 30th anniversary logo. So find your favorite Pokemon and its 30th anniversary logo and get it tattooed on your chest. What could possibly go wrong?
Putting some artists to work, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. What I wouldn't give to be the guy whose job it was to do all 1,000 Pokemon into the 30th anniversary logos. I mean, shit. It's like my dream job is being the guy who just comes up with all the thumbnails for like Netflix movies that are constantly changing. That's job security right there, you know?
Yep.
Anyway, we'll move on to our next bit of news. And this involves the My Mario line of products. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. These have been Japan exclusive for a while, but they have finally come out. These are baby products for babies, including like blocks and, you know, little sets and toys, and the Hello Mario app, which is for tablets and also is out for free on the Switch. There's, some cute little animated videos and whatnot. It's a whole suite of stuff for very, very young gamers. And these have now officially come to the States. I know the app is out now that you can grab on the Switch. And then in addition to that, I know like the Nintendo store had lines out of the store around the block for the baby toys, and not a baby to be seen in sight. It was all gamers around our age. So maybe these will be going up on the black market sometime soon. But if you have little ones, that's a heads up that you can get them Nintendo brand recognition early.
They all have babies, David. That's what you don't know.
I'm sure. But that's just a little bit of a PSA that the Hello Mario series is out now in the States. We're going to move on to our next bit of news. And as Hans said, this involves the Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition Nintendo Switch 2 edition. That's right. 2 editions in one title. The world is truly crazy. This has just dropped. It was a shadow drop. And it basically has no features other than bringing it up to 4K or near 4K, I think they say, and up to 60 frames per second. I don't think that it hits 60 frames per second all the time. I don't think it hits 4K all the time. But this patch is out now for Xenoblade Chronicles X. Of note, this is a $5 upgrade. And also, as of note, nothing is added in terms of features other than the graphical resolution. And I do believe that this is the first time that we've seen a paid upgrade where there are no actual quality of life features or any additional content added beyond just performance and graphical update, which is a bummer. It only being $5 is not a huge deal, but I don't like the precedent that sets. Hans, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I got it. So I had gotten Xenoblade Chronicles X when it came out last year, and I played a lot of it. I had never played it before. I think I put almost 20 hours into it. And then Switch 2 coverage started ramping up, and I was like, well, maybe they'll update it for the Switch 2 and I'll play the rest of it then. And then it was like radio silence on Xenoblade games getting updates at all until this. And yeah, you're right. Like, it is kind of a bad precedent for them to charge for something like this, especially since there have been Switch 2 like updates, like Splatoon had an update that was free, and it just, boosted all the graphics and everything.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons for this is because of this is stupid, but because of the Switch 2 edition branding and the fact that they are releasing it as a physical cartridge.
Yeah, that's 100% what it is.
Is why that this is happening the way it is, but whatever. I personally, like I said, I'd still prefer this over like kind of, DLC that I don't want inflating the price of a Switch 2 upgrade.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's how I feel about it. I did play it. I will say the other thing is, and I've only played it on the TV so far, but I've heard some people say, especially in handheld, it looks like pretty bad. So that's not great either.
Yeah, I've been hearing some issues with performance with this update. It breaks a couple things that were not broken before. And that, like you said, there are some scaling issues, especially in handheld, that weren't there previously. Obviously, that's a big problem. It seems like this was pushed out a little bit sooner than it was anticipated to be. That said, I have read right now that Nintendo is offering refunds to people if you reach out to them. Nintendo does refunds. They have kind of a weird backwards refund policy. You have to call them, and it's super annoying. It's not built in like Steam. But people have been reporting that they're getting refunds for this game. So I think Nintendo's very much aware that there are issues with the Switch 2 edition, but hopefully this is like a test run for what they're eventually going to be doing with the other Xenoblade Chronicles games, because there are 3 more of those motherfuckers on the eShop that could all use graphical updates for the Switch 2, and wouldn't it be nice if they were free? Yeah,
I'm one of those weirdos who Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is my favorite, and I would love to see an upgrade for that. I don't see it happening.
It does not look very good on the Switch in handheld, at the very least. I'll tell you that much. Yeah. But we'll go ahead and move on to our next bit of news, and this involves Supreme Leader Donald Trump. He may not be so supreme anymore because the court of the same name has struck down one of his major movements that he has pushed this year being the sweeping tariffs for imported goods against almost every country in the world. And those have been deemed, I guess, unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. And those are, as of now, overturned. Now, I do want to say that we are not a politics or, government policy podcast, nor are we financial experts or economic experts in any capacity. But I do think that this is worth talking about because it so heavily, I think, affected the price of video games and any sort of imported good over the past year. And with this now overturned, there's a lot that comes into question. Are we going to see the price of the PS5 go back down to where it was? Are we going to see those 2 price increases for the Xbox Series X revert to where they were originally? I'm seeing both of you shaking your heads already. And there's a lot of uncertainty as to what this means in terms of refunds. Is any of that going back to the American public, or is it all going to manufacturers? Was this entire thing a big scam? I want to get y'all's opinion on this. We're going to start with you, Jordan.
Huge grift.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta respect the game, hate the players. Yeah, dude, this is wild. And I'm trying not to be like too conspiracy pilled of like, this was the plan all along to get everyone to pay it. And then they're getting the taxpayer money on top of that.
Right.
It's just wild, man. Like, I don't think any of the prices are going down. One of the main things I learned from the COVID era and the pandemic era, when there was supply chain issues, all the prices went up because of the supply chain. And then did any of those prices go down when the supply chain went back?
Nope.
No.
Yep.
No. We just are now all used to paying that much more money.
Yeah.
So like none of these prices are coming down. Like it's just not going to happen. And I think I'm mostly just frustrated by the fact that it's like, all these companies are able to sue over these tariffs and maybe get their money back. But it's like, honestly, we're the people that are actually paying the costs. Like people
100%.
Smarter than us have done the math. They've done the research to say that like all these people are, the cost was passed on to the consumer. So like, I'm not going to get this money back. And I think that's just like really frustrating. And I think the other problem I'm having is like, this doesn't negate the fact that there is still right now a RAM shortage. And I'm putting that in like the biggest heavy quotes that you can imagine, because it's like not a shortage. It's like a pre-order of RAM for data centers that don't exist yet. So it's just like, that's not really a shortage because you're not missing anything.
Exactly.
Like, it just doesn't even exist yet. So it's like
and that'll be the excuse for them not lowering the prices again.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Is that well now we're in the RAM debacle, and they'll probably even just keep jacking them up. I think retailers, or not retailers, but manufacturers or whoever is trying to turn a profit, it will take any excuse they can to raise the price, and we'll just keep it there. Like you said, it's like they can then just say, well, it's now inflation has affected that or whatever. Right. And so it's pretty dire right now. I do think that there is a potential that this means that we won't necessarily see a Switch 2 price increase as soon as we thought we were. I do think there is one still coming, but I think that the tariffs were a huge reason why the Switch cost this much in the first place, right? And so, if those are now offset, potentially they can try to save some face and get as many people to buy at this price point as possible, because I really don't think they want anybody having any reason to turn down buying a Switch 2 at this juncture. Hans, do you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't see anybody lowering prices because if they have gotten away with charging people this much, they'll just keep doing it. I will say this is good for the board game industry. A lot of the board game publishers that I follow breathed a sigh of relief after this. So, but we're not a board game channel. That's just me. My own hobby.
Anime figurine collectors are also very pleased by this news. Those tariffs were very annoying to import from Japan. I will just say, last thing on this, this is kind of like bittersweet, and like I said, I don't want to get too into the weeds on this, but I think that this sets kind of a strange precedent in the Supreme Court. This was voted 6-3, and my thoughts on the Supreme Court, just as an enterprise, taking away the president's ability to raise taxes, like from the president, kind of potentially puts us down a slippery slope in the future. Like, obviously, this is great now because the tariffs were awful and hurt everybody, right? But like in the future, if a different party is in office and finds that like, oh, it's going to behoove us to have the president raise taxes on billionaires, if the Supreme Court can just be like, nope, can't do that because we have precedent set like that this is not allowed. I'm just get a little wary whenever the Supreme Court makes sweeping decisions like this in the context of like, how could this be used against us in the future, especially now that the Supreme Court is so packed with like a 6-9, left versus right ratio right now. It just makes me a little bit nervous going into whatever is coming after the Trump administration.
Yeah, I hear that, but like in their decision, this is like the reason why is it says framers like did not invest taxing power within the executive branch.
Right.
So the executive branch should never be setting taxation in the first place. So I think I don't know enough about history of economic policy to know if there is precedent for the executive branch setting taxation before this.
Right.
And if you know what I mean? So I'm kind of curious about that. Usually the taxes are set by the House, right? The Congress.
Yeah. I mean, I would think so, by the Senate in general. And so it's like, I think that, we're in such unprecedented times right now. Like if you look back like 4 presidents, like, and the amount of like executive orders that were made by each one, it's just gone up exponentially with every single president that we've had, Democrats included. Right. So it's, we're getting out no kings by the British right now with all the Epstein files and everything. So it's just a crazy freaking time to be alive. But we'll move on from politics now and talk about some other terrible news that's been happening. And the first one involves PlayStation, and Sony has shut down Bluepoint Games. Now, I think this is absolutely ridiculous. When I heard this news, I was flabbergasted. And honestly, I took it pretty personally. People will know that this podcast is based in Austin, Texas, and Bluepoint Games is also based here in Austin, Texas. And a lot of people that I know work at the studio and were affected by its closure. People that don't live in Austin might be affected just knowing that Bluepoint was a whole bunch of ex-Retro guys that worked there. Not exclusively them, but a lot of the people that worked on the first 3 Metroid Prime games moved on to form Bluepoint Games. They've made tons of games, from the Metal Gear Solid HD collection back on the Xbox 360 to the Shadow of Colossus remake, which I thought was freaking fabulous, all the way on to Demon's Souls as well for the PS5. They were working allegedly on a God of War live service game that Sony canceled, and then after that, they just shut them down. Really infuriating stuff here. They were such a talented studio and only really brought in under the Sony banner I think 2 years ago. So didn't even really have time to prove themselves. Jordan, you have any thoughts on this?
Mismanagement. This like Sony, this could have been a studio printing money. Like they could have been making Shadow of the Colossus remakes. Like I think what was strong about their remakes was they tried to keep as much of the integrity of the bones of the game and then just like make it graphical improvements. So it's like they could have just done that ad infinitum. Like, like they just announced the God of War trilogy remake. And I'm like, why wasn't Bluepoint Games making that? You know what I mean? I played the Shadow of the Colossus remake recently, and you're right. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It like looks how you remember it. It reminds me almost of like someone like Grezzo. They make just an upgraded version of the same games with this like a nice visuals, same bones. Like so many PlayStation games could have used that. So I'm just confused.
Yeah.
And the only explanation is they've had too many live service games. They spent too much money on it. And they said, you know what? We got to cut you. And that's just ridiculous.
I know. This is a weekly goddamn news story at this point. Last week we were talking about Highguard and, the almost entire staff of for that game being laid off. And now we've got 70 employees that have lost their jobs here. And they're some of the most talented people in the industry, and I know right now Retro is hiring in Austin. Those notices have gone up for Retro Studios. It means they're working on something, which is exciting. And hopefully they can scoop up some of these people. But, there are like 7 open positions there or something like that, right? Like, I know I just spoke to a friend of mine who was down at GDC, and he was saying dude, everybody there is like, no one knows what to do right now in the industry. Like everyone's at a loss. And I think this is just happening over and over and over again. It's just insane to see. Do you have any thoughts on this, Hans?
No, I mean, it just seems like it's just so stupid when it's like they push these live service games onto these studios in the first place who probably didn't want to do that. And then they bend that. And then they're like, okay, well, we got to, shut you guys down. It's just like
they get punished for something that wasn't even their decision in the first place.
It's just so it's just so scummy and bad.
Yeah, it's getting harder and harder to find things to not boycott.
Yeah, right. Like
it's just like I stopped my Xbox Game Pass subscription because of all the layoffs at Microsoft, and now I'm just like, I don't even want to. Not that I was playing a ton of PlayStation games before this, but it's just like when this kind of stuff happens at these studios, I just really don't want to support these companies anymore. And I'm not trying to be a fanboy here, but it's like you never hear about this at Nintendo, right? And it's just or like Valve. Well, Valve doesn't really make games anymore, but it's like, I'm really at this point, like I think that I'm like a Nintendo fan and like a Steam Deck fan because like they're the only companies that aren't constantly laying off their workers and actually treat their artists like artists, you know what I mean? And so I don't know. I'm on a bit of a high horse there, but man, this was very, very, very frustrating to read. And I really hope that everyone at the studio can land on their feet. I hope to one day not have to do a story like this every week. We're going to move on to just some more insane shit. And this time, at least, it is CEOs that are getting the axe and not low-level workers. Phil Spencer is, quote unquote, retiring from Microsoft as the head of the Xbox game division. And Sarah Bond, as well, has resigned. A new executive has been brought in, Asha Sharma, who is going to lead Xbox. And would you believe it? She is an AI person. That's right. Satya Nadella is the head of Microsoft, and seemingly everything he does is to push forward generative AI. And Asha Sharma very much seems like she is one of those people. And the thought is that still, and there was a leak that came out today that the next Xbox hardware is still allegedly dropping late 2027. Who knows what that's going to look like? Who knows what that's going to be with this new shakeup? But it is not very good looking to me. I really think that every time they're like, we're still doing Xbox stuff, we're still pushing forward with our hardware, we're still doing exclusives, I take all of that with a massive grain of salt. And I think that, Phil Spencer, I think for the past year or so has been really mismanaging Xbox. I don't know how much of that was his fault and how much was just Satya Nadella forcing him to make decisions he didn't want to make. Either way, it seems like he was not able to balance between what he knew gamers want as a gamer himself and what the company at large wanted. And now he is facing the music. Jordan, what do you have to say about this?
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
I mean, I just have so many, and David, you've been putting this off for a long time, doing an episode on AI.
Yeah.
This is my little hello. Maybe we should talk about this soon.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because she hasn't even been with Microsoft for that long.
Mm-hmm.
She was working, I think, for Instacart or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Different companies. So
the article says Meta too.
Yeah.
Meta, that's right.
Yeah.
That was the other big one. And it's just fascinating to me, why companies would bring in people who don't know the industry that they're being led, asked to lead. I kind of get it because you're getting an outside perspective, but at the same time, you want a little bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo famously did this with Reggie Fils-Aimé. He was at Pizza Hut or whatever before Nintendo. So
but he's nice.
Yeah, but he's nice and not a Gen AI shiller. Yeah.
No, maybe she's nice too. I don't know. But I was watching some interviews with her, and I don't know, just something a little bit rubbed me the wrong way. It's just this whole everything being built around AI seems almost like it's going to fail. Like, I do believe that this is a bubble. I think there is a kernel of something there, and all of these tech companies are racing to be the first one to get there because they know if they're the first one, there is an infinite amount of money in there. But I just don't think it's like the technology's there to do what they want to do with it.
I truly, and I'm going to sound like a real doomer here, okay? And bear with me, but I think the games industry like is going to crash hugely. I think it is. I think we're seeing it right now. I think the games industry is crashing right now, and it's going to bottom out. And I think AI and this AI arms race is killing the games industry. But I don't think that it's just the games industry. I think the games industry is going to fall along with the entirety of the world economy. Like, we are so zeroed in on this technology because all the biggest money makers in this earth right now are these tech companies that are all trying to do the same thing. And I think we're all going to pay the price for it, right? Yeah. Like, it is just such dark times ahead. And I'm not trying to just like light a candle on a fire and get everybody worried, but it's like, we need to hold on to things that are real right now because like there's not going to be a lot that we can do, I think, in regards to the way that our current world economy is structured, right? And so it's like, the games industry, as we have talked about, and we will probably talk about in the main topic here, is far more profitable than the films industry. It's bigger than it's ever been. It is at its zenith. It is at its peak. And if that is unable to sustainably keep itself afloat, then nothing is, right? Like, this, to me, the games industry is the canary in the coal mine for the greater world at large, right? So I don't know what to say. I don't know like what to do. Like, hold on to your loved ones because it's going to get rough out there. Like, learn how to cook, learn how to farm, be good at standing in bread lines because it is about to get a lot worse before it gets any better. And I swear I'm not trying to be hyperbolic here. I'm just like reading the tea leaves. And whenever I say shit like this and I see stuff like this happening, I'm almost never wrong on this stuff. I've had a lot of predictions when it comes to especially the last 5 years that have happened since COVID. But it's like we've all gotten so brain broken and so servile to like our, tech overlords, that I think we've started to really miss the forest for the trees here. And I just really hope that there's some kind of way that we can fix this before the whole thing blows up. But every day it seems more and more like that is not going to happen.
I think I'm mostly curious about the NDAs running out so I can hear Phil Spencer's perspective from all of this, because I mean, he's been kind of a punching bag for the past couple of years as all these Xbox studios close. And with this news, it makes me think like we don't know the full story. Like, I do think, we had talked about on this podcast about how Microsoft pushing all in on AI forces them to close a lot of studios or divisions or any other things like that. And I feel like Phil Spencer was trying to build something, and at the end of the day, that cost too much money for them to continue on this path. But I feel like a lot of his resignation is like he took a brunt of the fall for everything, and then now he has to just dip. Like, but it just makes me like curious about like what the actual behind the scenes was.
Yeah, I think he got the axe. I think Satya killed him. I think there's no world in which, maybe he was just like, I just can't do it anymore. And I think either way, it's the same result. But man, if BDS wasn't enough reason to boycott Microsoft, then let this be one for you. Certainly, I think my prediction, for Xbox over the next 2 years is this is them slowly letting Xbox down. I think that I cannot see new hardware coming out in 2027. I just don't think it's possible. Not with the RAM shortage, not with everything that's going on right now. I just do not think that Satya Nadella is interested in putting out a new Xbox. And whatever Satya wants is what we're going to get. Anyway, that's the end of the news. We're going to be talking about video game movies after the break. And we are back, and I got a beer to calm myself down, and back here in the main topic with Hans Gougar and Jordan to talk about somehow a less toxic entertainment industry than the video games industry. I feel like for a very long time you could not say that about the film industry, but here we are. Hollywood has officially planted its flag in the sand and said that video game movies are the new comic book movies. As we all know, Hollywood has always chased trends. They have always gone after, what is big at the moment. And, there were a long history of video game adaptations, but they always were straight to DVD schlock, or they had that stank on them, and they were just known as being low budget, low quality, low effort adaptations. It seems, though, that the tide has shifted, and we are now in a situation where maybe all the movies aren't amazing, but certainly a lot more effort is being put into video game adaptations. And not only that, we are now in an era where video games are getting movie adaptations announced as they release. Some of these, for instance, being Claire Obscure Expedition 33 had a movie adaptation announced the day the game came out, and Split Fiction as well was announced to have a movie version coming out. And I think that was maybe the same week that that game released as well. So we're in a different world now. And I just figured now that we have a panel full of filmmakers right here on the episode, this would be a good time to sneak in a little episode of Super Film Headz for the people. The people yearn for Super Film Headz, and we're giving it to them this week. Maybe we could start with you, Hans. What do you think about just kind of generally the current age of Hollywood going after video game adaptations?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, like you were saying, the video game movies used to just be like a punching bag. Like there were like no good video game movies, or like if they were, people were like begrudgingly saying it was okay. To be fair, I don't know that the quality has gotten a whole lot better, but at least for movies, I think TV shows are doing better. I mean, the Castlevania show is great.
You're goddamn right it is.
But at least they're making a ton of money now. Well, some of them are, and we'll talk about that too. Because there's some that are still stickers and still not making any money. But I
mean, that's like with comic book movies too at this juncture, right? It's not like you release a comic book movie and it's for sure going to make a bunch of money. I think probably COVID and kind of the post-2020 landscape of cinema probably has more to blame than I think, video game IPs themselves.
Yeah, going into last year, I would not have predicted that a Minecraft movie would do better domestically than the Avatar movie, but that's where we are. And Avatar still did fine, but a Minecraft movie made almost $500 million domestically, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good point that I think we should also bring up at some point, is kind of foreign versus domestic when it comes to video game IPs. Yeah. But before we get into that, Jordan, what are your thoughts about this kind of video game IP gold rush right now?
Oh, man. Really running out of ideas, huh? Man, brother. No, it's kind of nice because, like, I remember like growing up and liking some of the things I liked. I was like, not like teased a lot, but it's just like, oh, you're a nerd, and now it's cool. And I'm a little bit resentful of the youth for that because they don't have to suffer like I had to suffer. But I'm also very happy for them because you know what? It is cool. It's always been cool. But I'm just like to see more attention on it because like people take it more seriously. So you're able to get bigger names like, Steven Spielberg getting fumbled for Call of Duty.
Right.
No, but you're able to get like bigger names and bigger like people who are better at their craft involved on the movie end, which I think is awesome. Like, and there always has been a little bit of an interplay, at least like in the past 20 years, between movies and games, because there's games that are trying to be more cinematic. And then I think there are like movies that take from video games as well. Like Edge of Tomorrow is the one that just pops off the top of my head.
Very much so.
Henry.
Yeah.
That is a video game movie that has no video game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of cool to see the interplay as we come along. And to me is more interesting to watch, even if the overall quality of the movies is probably lower than
Mhm.
superhero movies, if I'm being honest, like the amount of good superhero movies versus good video game movies. But it is interesting to see. And I think there's just more variety
Yeah.
than like comic book movies, you know? And I think that's another reason that's like driving that gold rush, because it's like you can have a game from like Markiplier's Iron Lung, which is a game about a submarine and an ocean of blood. You can have like the Jake Gyllenhaal Prince of Persia movie set like time period accurate, all the way to a Minecraft movie, all the way to like Super Mario Bros. Movies, like all over the place in different genres.
Yeah.
And I think that's like also driving that rush.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and just to that point you said previously about movies being inspired by video games that aren't direct adaptations, if that's an interesting topic to you, we did do an entire episode on that a good time ago with Chris Gore from Film Threat and previously Attack of the Show. He joined for that episode. Film Threat these days is like an anti-woke slop, but back at the time we didn't know that. So listen to that episode with a grain of salt, but it was a fascinating topic and it's worth listening to, I think, even today, because there were a lot of really great points there. But yes, as you said, yes, there are so many possibilities for what you can do with video games. And I think I'm going to latch onto something you just said at the end there about Iron Lung, you know, and when we're talking here about, you know, big box office success for video game adaptations, I think that can come in all different shapes and sizes. Like, for instance, Iron Lung, that is a game almost nobody has heard of. I mean, Markiplier's audience probably has heard of it because I think he probably streamed this game, which is why he originally had the idea to adapt it, because it was probably incredibly cheap to get the rights for a single creator indie game like that, right? I find that fascinating. And they cost very, very little to produce that movie. I think a lot of it
$3 million.
$3 million was the budget. I think a lot of that was actually produced here in Texas, if I'm not mistaken.
From the behind the scenes, I think it was filmed at Austin Studios.
Yeah, I definitely know some of my own friends like worked on the set of that movie.
Yeah, just like watching the behind the scenes, it's like that studio looks familiar.
Yeah,
but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, either way, I think the point I'm trying to make is it was made for very little. And it made a modest amount at the box office, but it far surpassed its budget, right?
It's the best return on investment for a video game movie ever.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
So yeah, it's made like 43 million worldwide.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible for a budget of $3 million, right? So I think if anything, that's also going to kickstart this trend of YouTubers now making movies, which we are seeing a lot more of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people say that. People have been doing that. The Talk to Me guys from Australia did that too.
Chris
Stuckman's movie. Yeah. No, but I think that's fascinating, and I like that about this current gold rush is going after low budget indie games. Like for instance, Lakeith Stanfield is, at least this was announced a couple of years ago. I don't know where it's at in development right now, but is set to produce and star in an El Paso Elsewhere movie. You know, that's an indie game that not a ton of people have played, but is probably very easy to secure the rights to and can be made for a very low amount of money, right?
Another one in this vein is Werewolves Within, which was I haven't played that game, but I watched that movie. It's pretty good, directed by Josh Rubin. I don't know. I don't even know how well that movie did, but it's like a pretty fun, like whodunit kind of movie.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah. I think that there's an opportunity here for, I think, video game adaptations to take advantage of this sort of resurgence that we're seeing right now in mid-budget movies. I think that there's not a ton happening right now, and I think that Hollywood is going to take the wrong lessons from all this. But I have been seeing, I feel like especially in 2025, there were a lot of mid-budget movies being greenlit, from, some of that is like, like for instance, I just saw How to Make a Killing the other day, which I loved, and shout out to my buddy Harrison who edited that movie. So I'm a little bit biased, but that's like a mid-budget crime comedy. And there were just a ton of those last year. There was like Caught Stealing, Roofman, or some other ones like off the top of my head. I like this idea of not putting in a huge amount of investment and being okay with meager returns, right? And I think that video games have an opportunity to fill that niche more than comic book movies ever could, because comic book movies came out swinging with these giant, huge budgets. And so fans of comic book movies expect nothing less than like a giant, huge, multi-million-dollar budgeted film. And then if it misses, because they can't all hit, because I do think superhero fatigue is a real thing, then it's just big swings and big losses with an occasional hit. And I just think that's unsustainable for Hollywood. So I really hope that something that video game movies can do is kind of eschew that pattern and potentially get us smaller projects like this.
I think it's interesting to talk about like how risk adverse studios are.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you're saying is like they have these huge budgets and they have to make huge returns. And I think that one of the things that video games like offer studios is a known IP that has a built-in fan base. I think what they haven't really figured out how to like navigate yet. And David, you say this a lot where like gamers are really good at sniffing out bullshit.
Yeah.
And I feel like it happens with the movies as well. Even though I am a Sonic truther where I think the original trailer of Sonic where he like had the real human teeth was fake so that they could get more publicity.
Oh, really? Yeah.
I actually do believe that because there's no way they saw that in pre-production and were like, that's it. That's our Sonic. Like, there's no way. I
don't discount any conspiracy theories anymore these days.
I think that was a marketing ploy. I think that was a viral marketing ploy, and it fucking worked. Yeah. Anyway, but I think it's like they're the reason why we're going off on this huge IP gold rush is it's just like known entities. But I think there's also like something to be said about like there is an easier way like to stretch out the content with a video game versus a superhero movie, because like you could do a superhero TV show that's like kind of drawn out, but like a game is already like 10 to 20 hour experience that you stretch out into a season long of a show, like something like The Last of Us, which is almost like a 1-to-1 of the game. Like every episode is like one chapter of the game, which is like fascinating. So as we move into this like content deluge constantly of every streaming platform, which is a whole nother topic, but like they're looking for things they can stretch out and still like, have the budget of a 2-hour movie, but stretch it into 10 episodes. You know what I mean? So I think video games provide a good opportunity for them to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point about Last of Us as well, because, Last of Us turned out to be a pretty good adaptation, although granted, I have not watched season 2, and I know a lot of people were much more sour on season 2 than they were on season 1. I do think season 1 was pretty fabulous television and really stuck the landing for the most part. And Craig Mazin, we know, is now working on a Baldur's Gate adaptation as well. So he's kind of moved on from the Last of Us series to work onto that now. But, when it comes to adaptations, it's like you can really do a lot of different sorts of things. Like, for instance, take Castlevania. And again, this is a show that I've worked on. I worked on the original Castlevania series and Castlevania Nocturne. And I do, if I can pat myself on the back there a little bit, I do think that like, and not just myself, obviously, but I think that Castlevania kind of set a little bit of a precedent for the quality of adaptations going forward. Yeah. It's a very early Netflix show, was pretty critically lauded. I think audiences really enjoyed it and really set the bar for especially TV adaptations, but kind of this whole new swath. Doesn't get talked about as much as Last of Us because it's animation, and animation kind of always takes a backseat to live action. But all that regardless, sorry, I just had to jerk myself off for a second. But but I think take Castlevania, for instance. That show is an adaptation of a game that is really based on like Universal monsters, like the Castlevania franchise has always been a Japanese hodgepodge of Western influences with no real hard story that you could really adapt. So what they did with that series was come up with a new story for the most part. You have the bones of the series, but then you kind of really make it your own. You contrast that with something like Last of Us, where it's like you could just treat the game as storyboards for the show, and I think that we're in this cool area right now where there is no one size fits all, right? Comic book movies are kind of similar, but you really see at the end of the day, almost every comic book movie is adapting a certain kind of arc from comics and turning it into a story, and, just comic books themselves are very much a storyboard kind of medium that you can just take shots straight out of. But we're in this era right now where, you have all sorts of interesting shit. Like the Gran Turismo movie was like a movie that had the game Gran Turismo as part of the plot, and I think that's fascinating. Like there's just a lot of really cool stuff that you can do, you can go straight with an adaptation and be really successful in that way. You can do your own thing and be successful in that way. Of course you could fail in any of these endeavors, but I just think that's great that it's so open-ended, right?
By the way, I think Gran Turismo is better than F1, which is nominated for Best Picture right now for some reason.
I did enjoy Gran Turismo. That was a pretty cool story.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I liked it way more than I expected to.
Yeah.
But yeah, also there are still plenty of stinkers and like ones that don't do as well in the box office too.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Borderlands movie is one of the worst movies I've seen in the theater. And it did not do well at all. And also just like did you guys know there's a Silent Hill movie that came out this year?
Yeah, there's a brand new Silent Hill.
Unfortunately, yes, I do.
I did not see it, and I don't think anybody else did.
I will watch it, but as soon as it was like, yeah, it's the director from the first Silent Hill movie, and I was like, that doesn't inspire a lot of confidence, man. I'm like, I watched the first Silent Hill movie recently in the past like 2 years for the first time, and I'm like, yeah, this is passable. I wouldn't say this is a great film. So getting that same person to do the second one, I'm so sorry to this director. I'm not trying to shit on you, dude, but like, it's just like, and he's also adapting Silent Hill 2. And then as soon as I saw like the lead person they cast, like doesn't even look like the Silent Hill 2 protagonist, I was like, ooh, this is rough. But I will say the thing I did really like about the original Silent Hill movie was that it does feel like a video game in some of the cinematography in it. And just a really fun tidbit after I watched that, I was like, man, who did the cinematography for this? Because like, it actually was like, looks pretty good and like feels like a video game. Like it feels like whoever shot it loves video games. Same dude who did John Wick Chapter 4, which has a Hotline Miami style scene in it that I was like, dude, this guy is a gamer. Like that cinematographer has to be a gamer. There's no other way that those two things go together. But I
do think that was very much an era of video game movie adaptations where they were actually like making it feel like you were playing the game when you're in the theater. And I'm thinking specifically about the Dwayne The Rock Johnson Doom movie that ends with that first person sequence of just like ripping and tearing. The best part of that movie by far is when they were just like, we're just gonna do the first person shooter thing.
Give that man a chainsaw. The 2000s era was like, dude, that was rough. I mean, I feel like the 90s and the 2000s era was just pretty rough. And then it's like you see though, when you get to the 2010s, when like someone's like, okay, let's like take this serious and make like a almost like $200 million Prince of Persia movie that just flopped. Like, I always forget. I'm like, oh yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal was in that. Yeah. Whatever happened there, man? So it's just kind of strange. Like, I feel like it has had a lot of peaks and troughs and it's like just not great for the most part. And I still think we've not really achieved like a truly incredible transcendent video game movie. It just hasn't happened yet.
I remember though when that Warcraft movie was coming out and it was supposed to be a huge deal and wasn't great either.
yeah. That was one. It did really well though, especially in China.
Yeah.
I mean, and then the thing that they don't understand, and this is something I really wanted to get y'all's opinion on, is like, how do you transition from an interactive experience like video games and versus a passive experience like film or TV where you're sitting and watching it? And I think the solution lies in, David, not to stroke your ego too much, is in Castlevania, where you take an IP where there is a lot of character designs, there is a loose story like built into the game, and you expand on that story you hire good writers who know how to expand a story, and then you let them go loose with the IP and the world that already exists and let it go, man. Like, I think I kind of prefer that more than something like that's a one-to-one recreation of a game.
Totally.
I think that comes down. I mean, this is a whole soapbox that I've got, but the word adapt does not mean like keep it the same. Like adapt is morph it into a different medium.
Just look at Wuthering Heights.
But like some people are so precious about keeping it exactly the same. And I'm like, when you do that, it kind of ends up being a worse product. I would much prefer them, take it and do something with it that it's still within the realm of like what the game was trying to aspire to or whatever, but do something, just actually adapt it into something that is more appropriate for a movie experience as opposed to a video game.
That's franchise dependent though, right? You can't do that with everything. Like you couldn't do that with Last of Us. Like Last of Us is just like, you just have to make it the way that people want at that point. And that's because, it's just already so cinematic and it already works in that way, right? And it has a very clear story. Like, if they made, they are making that God of War series. I'm sure that's going to, maybe it's going to follow the new things. Maybe it's going to, I guess there's a lot of different things you can do with that character and in that universe. I think a good example of something that I think has worked pretty well that kind of does both is what Fallout is doing right now. And I think that like the Fallout series is actually really fantastic. And I think what makes it work so well is that it slots right into the canon of the games. It treats the game story as canon for the show. And it's like all part of it. It's in the same timeline. And I think that's a really cool and good way to do it, because Fallout is a game where you play a character and you have your own agency and you get to make all the decisions and they could, anything could work out any number of ways. But if you have this linear story that you want to tell, then a TV show or a movie is probably a good way to do that. And I think it's a good way to approach that IP, right? And it's doing really, really well for Amazon, even though I don't see nearly as many people buzzing about season 2 as I saw talking about season 1. I put some of that up to Amazon marketing not being the best. But I think that's a really good point. And there's lots of different ways you can do it. But if they had done a Last of Us show where he just kind of like goes off on his own adventure,
it doesn't make sense.
Very mad.
But I think that I still think that people get too precious about keeping it exactly the same when there's a little more to it than that. Yeah,
it should be a sandbox, not a storyboard. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like play within the world. Don't like be bogged down by it.
Mm-hmm. There's some good questions in here, and that's kind of like, why are we where we are right now? This was kind of in the show notes, and I think one of the things that you posited here, Jordan, was that there's a huge explosion of video game popularity during the COVID lockdown era, and that probably led a lot of people to being like, let's do this. Let's cash in on that. More of Hollywood being very reactive to market conditions and whatnot. Do you have anything to kind of add to that theory there?
We've been making video games movies for over 30 years now, but like, I feel like the recent explosion of IP acquisition reminds me of superhero movies in like the 90s when like, I guess that was also due in part to Marvel was about to like completely go out of business. So they were just trying to like auction off the IP rights, but it's just, it's like they're trying to just cash in on like, okay, people know this niche thing, but to me, it's like the weirdest IPs get bought out sometimes, you know what I mean? But like, they're just like, if it costs pennies on the dollar to acquire the rights, might as well. And if we don't ever process it, we can just sell it later down the line. But I just feel like it's like they saw how many people truly were playing video games. And I think it's a little bit of like, Hollywood is afraid of being left behind and not relevant anymore, especially that video games make way more money than the film industry. So I think it's a little bit of that as well.
Yeah. It is also just an evolution of what we saw with comic book movies, in that all the shit that kids used to get bullied for back in the day, liking anime, liking comic books, liking video games, is now in the mainstream, And then on top of that, you've got, it's all nostalgia play, right? Like it is very much just like what sells nostalgia, right? You can't do that forever though, because people age out, and it's like, I think a good example of that is the Mario movies. It's like, you've got kids coming because Nintendo is really good at putting out new shit, right? You've also got 40-year-olds going because they grew up with Mario, right? But you can't put out like an Asteroids movie and just hope that the 40-year-olds come out, because there's no new Asteroids games that the kids are playing all the time, right? So it's like a balance between like nostalgia and this whole idea of like the brand movie or like the legacy sequel. We've been seeing a lot of that. That's another nostalgia play that we see happen a lot in Hollywood. But I think video game movies definitely got caught up in all of that. And that's like why we're seeing a lot of them now, is because I think that's a huge trend in Hollywood as well, right? Something else I'd like to talk about is, just some of the history of video game movies and stuff that we've seen. We talked a lot about stuff in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. We had a lot of kind of sus slop back then that we're seeing now get second life. For instance, obviously one of the biggest ones is the Mario Brothers movie from 1993. I've got that playing in the background on my little CRT that I taped off of the Disney Channel back in the day. That was my original Disney Channel recording that I did. Also, Mortal Kombat, that came out in 1995. Both of those have new movies coming out this year in those franchises, right? So that's fascinating to see. We're seeing the same thing with the 2000s. Lara Croft Tomb Raider. We're getting a new Lara Croft series that's coming out soon. There's also the animated series as well.
I was going to say, we've got the Street Fighter movie on here too. That's also going to get a new movie this year.
That's true. Yeah. I didn't even remember that. That's got the craziest cast of all time, by the way.
Yeah, it's an incredible cast. I'm curious to see it for the event spectacle of all those people in the same movie.
Right.
It's just like more of a fun idea than maybe the movie is going to be good.
Yeah.
It does seem like it's going for like meme movie status, like the Minecraft movie was, rather than being like a real movie. What I mean? Like I can't imagine that people aren't going to be throwing popcorn at the screen and screaming chicken jockey or whatever, or whatever the equivalent is for Street Fighter. But I don't know. I don't know if kids play Street Fighter these days. But in the 2000s, we had Tomb Raider, like we said, Resident Evil. That's getting a new adaptation as well.
Yeah, that one's with Zach Kreger, which is crazy. I'm actually pretty excited for that.
Yep. We had the House of the Dead movie, Doom, as we talked about, Silent Hill. Then we had like a real shitty period, I think, in the 2010s with like Prince of Persia, that awful Assassin's Creed movie that came out was in that time. What else did we have in there? We had another Tomb Raider that everybody forgets, but was actually pretty good.
There's that one.
There's a Need for Speed movie with Jesse from Breaking Bad, which I think
they were really trying to rise that star, and it just, unfortunately did not work for him.
Right.
I know I planted my flag in the Pokemon hater camp, but Pokemon Detective Pikachu was pretty good. It was all right.
Yeah, I mean, that was also probably one of the movies that really made people think that this was really profitable, because that did really, really, really well. And that was in 2019, right before all the theaters shut down for COVID in 2020, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like, it had the opportunity to really push video game movies out into the mainstream, where I think if that had come out 1 year later, we might be in a different world right now.
I think it was that and Sonic the Hedgehog, which came out like right before COVID. Yeah.
But even then, it's like Sonic has done well, but they've all done like the exact same. Like they all released to like meager box office successes. They all have like the same Metacritic or the same like Rotten Tomatoes score. They're all about the same level of quality. They're all like kind of
they're all basically the same level of quality.
Yeah, exactly. But they really churn those out. I mean, we've now we know, what is it? They've got the new one with Amy that's going to be coming out. We got the casting for Amy as well, which is kind of interesting.
I'm just happy for Ben Schwartz, though,
It is nice to see. But I think now in the 2020s, and Nintendo has really made this very explicit in the way that they talk about why they're using, or what they're using these movies for. It is very much tied in with their overall strategy for marketing the games, right? And I think, Nintendo and Illumination is taking a lot longer on these Mario movies than Paramount is with the Sonic movies. And I think the quality does show. Whether or not you like the movies, they're at least really, really well produced movies, right? Mm-hmm. And I think look really, really good. But, I think Nintendo is treating their IPs with a lot more reverence, and they're treating it like prestige product. I think this Zelda movie, they're really taking their time with it, and they know they don't want to repeat the mistakes that they did with the live action Mario back in the day, and I don't think the first Mario movie is like that good of a movie, but man, it made over $1 billion. And I think them really putting their whole ass to it, filling it with references that, tons of people can enjoy, and showing reverence for the source material, having Miyamoto super involved in the production of both of these movie franchises really shows that there is kind of a cyclical pipeline that you can have with game promotes movie, promotes game, promotes movie, promotes game, right? And I think Nintendo's really trying to lock into that cycle. Do you guys have any thoughts on just the idea of the video game movie as marketing material for the games industry?
I feel like no one else is treating it in that way.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, I feel like all of these other ones are just trying to make a successful movie
And using the
leech-
IP for that.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
leeching
that's
the fan base.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly what, you know, like Blumhouse is doing with the Five Nights at Freddy's movies.
Mm.
I remember when Five Nights at Freddy's came out, the first one, it was kind of a shock how well that did in the theater
Yeah.
because it also released day and date on, I think, Paramount Plus or something, or maybe it was.
Yeah, that was a COVID
Yeah.
release. Yeah, yeah.
But it still made like, I mean, just it was a $20 million budget and it made like $300 million or something like that. So, yeah. So I definitely think that some of these are just writing the IP, but then yeah, definitely it does seem like Nintendo knows what they're. I mean, I think that Nintendo is kind of doing the trying to capitalize on like the Lego movie success in how the movies are pretty similar. Also, both star Chris Pratt and are just like ads, which that isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that does seem like what they're doing.
Yeah, and you're just seeing a lot more interplay, I think, with Nintendo at the helm. You know, it's like the Mario Galaxy games got a re-release, you know, right before the Mario Galaxy movie is coming out. And then I really do think that we'll be seeing a 3D Mario at the end of this year that, you know, get the hype up for Mario with these games just in time for the streaming release on Netflix. And then they drop a game holiday season or whatever, right? You know, I might be wrong on that, but I think regardless, it's clear that that is Nintendo's strategy here. And I think them having a seat at the table as opposed to something like, again, say Castlevania, where, you know, Netflix has the rights and, you know, or at least the rights to distribute, and, you know, the Frederator Studios or whoever actually bought the rights to Castlevania from Konami, you know, Konami's like, yeah, use it. But you don't see, we're only just now seeing Konami like put out a new Castlevania game after years and years of fumbling it while the show was really popular, you know? So it's like having the creatives like actually in there and, you know, Nintendo investing in Nintendo Pictures, really going whole hog on this multimedia parks and movies and experiences sort of thing in addition to their games, I think is really working out in their favor. And I do kind of think we'll see more of that. You know, I think Sony was trying to do that with the PlayStation Pictures thing that they were doing, but I just don't think that they ever really made it work. And just, you know, Uncharted was dog shit, and a lot of the PlayStation movies aren't as good.
Sony doesn't know how to make a good movie.
Sony doesn't know how to make games anymore. Also, let's get real about that.
We disagree on this,
okay, sure.
but that's a topic for another time. I just like one word comes to mind, David: synergy.
Yeah, very much.
That's all I can think about. Yeah, but Nintendo is more about the synergy. Everyone else is about like how can we like milk this tit as much as we can, you know, like it just, and I think, you know, it's like for our credit, like we can tell what the difference, you know?
One quick thing I'd like to say, I saw Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die recently, the new Gore Verbinski movie. And it is so inspired by Portal. You know, like
really?
Very much so. In fact, there are multiple Portal references in the movie. At one point, they're in this like room of this kid. He's got a Portal poster on the wall. There's a point where they're like escaping through a sewer tunnel, and there's "The Cake Is a Lie" is like graffitied on the wall. I was like, cool, 2007 reference, bro. In your 2026 movie, but it's, you know, Gore Verbinski was also going to make the BioShock movie, right? Like back in the day, and that got canceled. That was one movie that I really, really wish came out. I think if Gore Verbinski today was like, I want to make a BioShock movie, it would be greenlit and funded and everything like that, you know? And I think
they're making a BioShock movie right now, though.
They are. Well, I think it's a series, maybe, but it's streaming. I think it's Netflix is doing it, if I'm not mistaken. But in addition to that, another canceled one that I think would totally work today was Neil Blomkamp's Halo movie. Another one that I really wish had actually happened. You know, I feel like both Gore Verbinski and Neil Blomkamp ended up taking elements from those canceled projects and putting it into like A Cure for Wellness and the Elysium. Yeah, the Elysium movie that Neil Blomkamp did. They both had a lot of the DNA in there, but that's just something I wanted to make sure to get in before we ended the topic here. But maybe we can wrap this up here with kind of what we want to see from video game adaptations in the future and kind of where we think it's going from here. I think, we're well in the gold rush right now. It's no longer like a question of if this is going to be a thing, but like what it's going to look like down the line. How do you think video game movies avoid kind of the pitfalls of the comic book movie genre? And do you think that they'll be around for a long time, or do you think it might fizzle out?
I think a lot of the problem with the superhero movies is kind of what you had said earlier on, which is that superhero movies all kind of felt the same.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up kind of just, it's like, okay, I'm just seeing another one of these. But what we said about the strengths of video games is video game isn't really a genre.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, you can have horror video game movies, and you can have adventure, and you can have fantasy, and you can, do that kind of thing. And just like spread out the types of films they're making. And even like the levels of budget. Like we'd said before too.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the levels of budget is like where they go next, because it's just like, you don't need to make every video game movie doesn't have to be a $200 million Minecraft movie level, you can go all over the gamut. And I feel like that's just like a lesson in general Hollywood needs to learn, and they're starting to pick up on it.
They're kind of being forced to with all these failures after COVID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I just feel like that's the future. And it's like just a variety of budgets with a variety of different like types of movies in the genres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so much more we could say, but I think we probably should wrap it up there. Is there anything anybody wants to get in before we finish here?
Yeah, I just really want a Kirby movie.
I think that's inevitable. I think we will see one. I think that's probably next. At least a revival of a TV series.
Did you guys see some speculation about Star Fox being in Super Mario Galaxy?
I did. Yeah. I think it's hot air, sadly.
Yeah,
I think there's no shot. Although a Nintendo Cosmic Universe is something I've wanted to see for a long time. Yeah. The crossover of all the space sci-fi
and
Nintendo
Super
series.
Smash Bros. Starring Kirby.
Yeah, they're probably working towards that.
I'm just saying.
Yo, bring in Sonic. Bring in Richter Belmont.
Snake.
Yeah, bring in. Yeah. Where's the Metal Gear Solid movie? Isn't that happening? That just Death Stranding? I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. There's no Death Stranding in Smash.
Man, we did not spend as much time dumping on Minecraft as I was hoping we would. But.
God, this movie's fucking bad.
I watched it for the first time. One of the reasons I didn't watch it is because I kept seeing how awful the theater experience was.
Yeah.
So I just did not feel like going. And then by the time it was like 2 weeks old, I just didn't want to go.
I feel like that movie, like the first half of the movie, I was surprised. I was like, oh, this is kind of like an interesting story of like,
because it's like Jared Hess being Jared Hess.
That fascinated me, and then it ended up not being a thing.
And then the second half, when as soon as they get sucked into the world, I was like, oh,
something else is the connective tissue here being Jack Black, right?
Oh we missed that.
Yeah. So Borderlands, Minecraft, and Mario all starring Jack Black.
Yes.
Clearly, Hollywood is chasing that dragon, right?
I forgot he was in Borderlands.
Everybody does. Everybody forgets everything
Jablinski.
about that movie.
I think it was Jablinski that kicked this off.
Yeah, it is.
His gaming channel.
It totally is. All right. Anyway, what about you, listener? What are some of your favorite video game movies? Obviously we couldn't go through the whole list of all the video game movies that are out there right now. What are some of your favorites? What did we leave out? What did we forget in this conversation? Please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. But I think with all that out of the way, we are going to table this for now and move into our last segment of the show, which is the games we've been playing recently. I have been playing a lot of games recently, and mostly on my AYN Thor. And so I'm going to be mostly talking about those this week. One of them I've been playing, I've talked about before on the show, that's Apotris. This is a fan-made Tetris game that has a whole bunch of ports. It has like a Switch port and a PC port, but I've been playing the GBA version, and I've been really enjoying that on my AYN Thor. It's nice to have a game that I can just put on and have to do something with my thumbs with that device specifically. And that currently is the game of choice for me in that regard. Another game I've been really enjoying on the 2-screen device is DK Jungle Climber. Did you guys ever play that game for the DS?
No, but no. You're like this, right?
Yeah. It's a game made by, I forget what they're called. not Payon, something like that. But you are Donkey Kong. It's very much a Clue Land like. Where you hold on to pegs and you spin around pegs and you throw yourself around. It's just a really interesting movement mechanics and control scheme and gameplay. Unlike a ton of games, and as far as platformers are concerned, it's very unique and very fun to play. Just a great game that I missed when it originally came out, but now I have an opportunity now that I have a dual screen device to actually play this game again. So that's been one I've been going back to, and I've been really enjoying DK Jungle Climber, even though it's kind of the black sheep of the DK series. And then lastly, I picked this game up on Steam, but I have been playing it on my AY and Thor, and that is Marbles. And this is a Marble Madness like, David loves his ball rolling games. And this is an isometric kind of GBA styled, like it's 3D, but it has those kind of like black outlines and kind of crunchy visuals like you would see with 3D games on the GBA. It reminds me almost visually a little bit like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games and the way that they handled 3D on the GBA. But this is just a really fun Marble Madness style game where it's not about getting high scores, but it is about getting to the end. And there's a lot of exploration involved in the game. It's really fascinating and it plays really well. This is another game that I can kind of have something on in the background while I'm playing it. But it is so much fun and I've been really enjoying this. And I just really like buying games on Steam now with the intent of playing them on my AY and Thor. Like there are games where I don't necessarily want to lug out my Steam Deck to play, but a little game like this fits a whole lot better on a small form factor like that device. So I've been really enjoying that myself. So check out Marbles if you have a chance. I've been really enjoying that, especially if you like ball rolling games. Jordan, what about you? What have you been playing recently?
I haven't been playing too much. I'm playing Hades 2, which is incredible still. I've now surpassed, I think, like the main story beats. I'm not really sure how much further it goes beyond that. And I'm just like constantly in awe with how many writers they had to have on this game, dude. There is like so much dialogue written and then it's all voice acted as well. It's just like incredible. But yeah, so I've been playing that and still really enjoying Hades 2. Really fun to throw down on some runs. I just got my first statue, which if you play the game, you kind of know what that means towards the end game. But other than that, I've been diving into Ghost of Tsushima because this is a game I bought a while ago when it was on sale. And I said, hey, when I'm unemployed, that's going to be my unemployment game. And I like it. Mostly. I think it's somewhere in between Breath of the Wild and Assassin's Creed, where there are like a lot of really beautiful world building and visual elements where you're running around the world, but then there's just like so many dots on the map to like go and do, but all the dots are kind of like the same like 7 to 10 things that you do. So I'm a little conflicted and so now that I've done a lot of the dots, like at the beginning of the game, I was like, okay, cool. I kind of get this concept. Let me just kind of like focus more on the story and the side quests and stuff like that. But visually it's incredible. The cinematics are really great. It really just kind of like captures the feeling. And I think it does that really well. But
I mean, that's one you could do a straight adaptation of for a movie, probably, right?
I think so. And they probably are trying to do that right now. I think that's, they've announced that. So, so I've been enjoying that for the most part. Hans, what about you? What have you been playing?
So, I was inspired by, David to get an emulation device.
Hell yeah.
I got the Ambernic, their names are so bad. RG34XXSP.
Yeah. The one with the sticks. You got sticks on it and a GBA
it has the
size
screen.
And
the sticks are really weird, not that easy to use, but I've been really enjoying it. I played through Metroid Fusion, which is great. And then lately I've been playing Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. That's been a lot of fun. I hadn't played a lot of the older Kirby games, but I'm a big Kirby fan now, so I'm trying to go back and catch up on some of those. And it's been great.
The Kirby GBA games are really excellent.
Yeah, I mean GBA, it's becoming just like my favorite just aesthetic for Nintendo. Like I just love the pixel art. I think is just
the peak
best.
of Nintendo pixel art. Yeah,
it's just the best. So I've also, my friend got me back into playing Valorant, which
sorry.
it's I have fun with it. But you can tell from the tone of my voice that I'm not super happy about the fact that I'm having fun with it. So, but that's been, I mean, it's just kind of fun to play a multiplayer game with my friend. Also, we didn't do a Steam Next Fest corner, but,
that's true. We are recording a little early on Monday. I didn't have a chance to play any Next Fest demos.
But they did, I had to get some board game in here. They have a demo out for the Twilight Imperium, digital edition. Twilight Imperium is one of those like gigantic 4X style board games that takes you 9 hours. And I own it and I have played it twice. But this digital version is cool because it's going to be, you're going to be able to play it a lot easier online than the actual board game. So
that's
the
cool.
demo is like very, very light. It is only a demo of like the combat step. I think it was just they had to push something out there for Next Fest. So it's not much of a demo, but I just wanted to give it a shout out because I'm excited for that game. So that's all I've been playing.
Very good. Very good. Well, I do love seeing board games turned into video games. We have a whole episode on that as well, if that's an interesting topic to you. We'll have that linked down below along with the video game movie episode that we did previously. But I think that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much, Hans, for joining on today's
Thanks
episode.
for having us.
Of course, always. No, you know what? Thanks for having all of us.
Yeah.
Thank God for putting us on Earth. We love the Christian God. Thank you very much to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. Thanks to all of our patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much everywhere on the internet at Monolith Fiji.
You can find me at Bordan.
And what about you, Hans? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, I'm on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Hans Gougar.
Very good. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, that's switchheadz.com. And like I said, we have a Patreon, a Discord, and a Facebook group. If you'd like to chuck in a couple bucks over there on the Patreon, it would be greatly appreciated. We're not going to stop you. And please join us over on the Discord. It's such a wonderful community. I mean, that's how we met you in the first place, Hans, was over on the Discord. There is definitely a Discord to podcast guest pipeline if you're trying to be like Hans, which everybody should really try to be a little bit more like Hans, if I'm being honest. But other than that, it's just a great place to discuss episodes of the show, talk about all the newest gaming news, and whatnot. Great place to play games with friends and whatnot. So please join us over there on the Discord. We would love to have you. We've got a great episode planned for you guys for next week. But in the meantime, gang, you guys know the drill. Be safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Why don't you go secure the rights to the cheapest video game you've ever heard of and make your own video game movie? It's not that hard to do. Lakeith Stanfield, where's your movie?
$3 million.
Yeah, $3 million. Meager $3 million.
What's $3 million?
Come on. What can a banana cost? $10? Anyway, fuck ice, free Palestine. We'll see you next week. We love you very much. Bye-bye.